can feel it long before you see it. The jungle is a living lung. It breathes in heat. It exhales rot. It usually hums with a chaotic, desperate energy. The frantic screech of insects. The deep, guttural belch of bullfrogs in the mud. The sudden, violent rustle of macaques tearing through the high canopy. But tonight, absolute silence. The cicadas stop screaming all at once. It is a sudden, suffocating quiet that physically hurts the eardrums. The air grows incredibly heavy, wet. It clings to your bare skin like a damp, suffocating shroud. A single heavy drop of milky latex bleeds from the scarred bark of a nearby rubber tree. It smells sharply of ammonia and raw, upturned earth. Something is walking through the shadow twin of the Malay groves. It does not snap twigs beneath its feet. It does not disturb the sprawling ferns. It moves the way a shadow moves when a thick, bruised cloud passes over a dying moon. Smooth, unbroken, terribly wrong. You lock your heavy wooden doors. You draw the thick, woven curtains. But wood and glass cannot stop a promise. The darkness outside presses against the glass. It is a physical weight. The temperature in the room plummets, leaving a film of cold, greasy condensation on the inside of the window panes. You think you are safe in your house. You think the boundaries you drew in the dirt matter to the dark. They do not. We draw lines. We build walls. We pretend the wild is something we can lock out. But the wild doesn't break down doors. It waits for you to open them. It waits for you to extend your hand. It waits for an invitation. Men are fragile things. We break easily. We bleed quickly. We build our little empires in the dirt. We clear the land with machete and fire. We try to carve order out of the breathing wild. But the wild always pushes back. Always. Disease wilts the roots. Thieves steal the harvest in the dead of night. Jealous neighbors cast resentful glances over fences. A man alone in the dark is a man deeply afraid. And fear makes men greedy. Fear makes men seek out bargains they cannot possibly afford to pay. The acrid smoke of burning husks drifts through the settlement, stinging the eyes and leaving a bitter taste of ash on the tongue. They go deep into the green, past the marked trails, past the warning signs carved into the ancient banyan trees, to the deep hollows where the sunlight refuses to reach the soil. The air here is choked with the sickly sweet rot of decaying orchids and deep, stagnant black water. They seek out the Hantu Raya. Understand this fully. The Hantu Raya isn't a ghost. It isn't a restless soul wandering the earth. It's a contract. A binding of blood, intention, and bone. An inheritance of shadows. A saka. You offer it a home inside a small, hollowed-out gourd or a clay jar. You feed it exchange for this tribute, you get a guardian, the ultimate tireless protector, the spirit you hired to protect your home. It clears your sprawling fields in a single night. It guards your livestock from tigers and thieves alike. It stands at the very edge of the property line, a towering, shifting mass of supercooled, darkened air. It is the Master's shadow. It serves faithfully. It obeys every command. For a time. But men age. Their spines curve beneath the weight of years. Their sharp eyes cloud over with cataracts. Their iron grip weakens until they can barely hold a cup of tea. The entity does not age. It only feeds. It feeds on the nightly offerings. But more than that, it feeds on the Master's fading vitality. It watches from the corner of the room. It learns. The entity absorbs the microscopic details. It studies the specific way the Master clears his throat before speaking. It perfectly memorizes the slight, painful limp in his left leg. It mimics the exact gravelly cadence of his rare laughter. A fine layer of gray dust settles over the Master's belongings, undisturbed by the stagnant, unmoving air of the house. The Master thinks he owns a loyal dog, a fierce beast on a tight leash. He does not realize he has been meticulously raising a mirror that doesn't quite agree with the room. He does not realize that every drop of blood he offered was a down payment on his own identity. The shadow grows denser, more solid. The boundaries between the Master and the servant begin to blur in the oppressive heat. The fine print of the contract demands the saga be passed on before death. If a new owner isn't found, the Master suffers. But what if the spirit doesn't want a new Master? What if it just wants to keep the old one? What happens when the spirit you hired to protect your home decides it wants to be you? The Master inevitably falls ill. It is a sickness the doctors cannot name. He lies trapped in his wooden bed, his skin pale and translucent like wet rice paper. His breath rattles loosely in his failing chest. The damp, profoundly sour smell of a fever-soaked mattress fills the tight confines of the small bedroom. His terrified family gathers around him. They weep softly into their hands. They pray to old gods and new. But out in the glaring sun of the caboon, the heavy work continues. The neighbors look across the property line. They see the Master. He is swinging a heavy iron scythe with terrifying rhythmic precision. He is effortlessly lifting 90-pound sacks of rice over his shoulders. He looks strong. He looks 10 years younger. But his eyes are empty, flat, like the completely still surface of a stagnant, algae-choked pond under a starless, moonless sky. He does not blink. Nobody moves. He comes home as the sun dips below the horizon. The family is utterly paralyzed by confusion. The Master is in the back bedroom, dying, his pulse a faint flutter. Yet, the Master is simultaneously sitting at the head of the dining table, demanding his evening meal with a voice that booms off the wooden walls. 2 bodies, 1 face, 1 dying, 1 eating. Cold, damp clay violently brushes against the wife's arm as the man at the table reaches for his porcelain plate, entirely lacking the familiar, comforting warmth of human skin. wears his weathered face. It wears his stained clothes. It effortlessly commands his terrified household. The contract was never just a transaction for physical labor. It was a hostile takeover, an apprenticeship in how to be a man. The entity does not want to return to the cold, empty dark of the clay jar. It wants the warm light of the lantern. It wants the crackling hearth. It wants the life it has watched for decades. The dying man in the back room lets out his final, ragged breath. At that exact moment, the man at the dining table stops chewing. He looks up. He smiles. It is a terrible smile. The muscles of the face move incorrectly, sliding like rigid gears grinding beneath a thin layer of stretched, pale clay. The shadow has severed its anchor. It is free. And it is hungry for tomorrow. The true master dies in the dark, but the master still walks the sunlit paths of the kampong. The master still tends the rubber groves, his cuts into the bark suspiciously deep. The master still sleeps next to the terrified, silent wife. The villagers look away when he passes. They know the terrible truth. They can smell grave dirt on him, beneath the sharp sting of cheap cologne. But they say absolutely nothing. They nod. They smile. Because to acknowledge the shadow is to invite its hollow, flat-eyed attention. The grit of fine-blown laterite soil crunches softly beneath your boots as you stand at the edge of the plantation. Look carefully around you. Look at the sturdy walls you built to keep your family safe. Look at the people sitting across from you. The people you rely on. The people who protect you. Are you entirely sure of who they are? Or are you just looking at a very patient shadow? One that finally learned exactly how to stand in the light, wear a familiar face, and speak your name. Be very, very careful what you invite into your home. It might just decide it likes your chair. It might just decide to stay forever. They still tell that story in the groves.